Imagine a world plunged in darkness the moment the sun dipped below the horizon. No artificial lights. No warmth beyond the fragile heat of your own body. No cooked meals, no safe shelters, just the endless rustling of predators in the trees, and the gnawing chill of night seeping into your bones. This was the world of early humans before fire. They were clever in their own right, survivors, hunters, toolmakers, but they were also vulnerable. Without fire, they relied on daylight for activity, lived in constant fear after dusk, and consumed raw food that demanded more energy to digest, and often harbored deadly pathogens. Life expectancy was brutally short. Injuries, infections, or harsh weather could spell a quick end. Their relationship with nature was not one of dominance but of fragile coexistence. So what did survival actually look like? Well, let's zoom in. Picture a group of Homo erectus, one of our ancient ancestors, huddled in a rocky outcrop somewhere in East Africa. It's evening. The air cools rapidly. Their eyes scan the tree line, muscles tense. No one sleeps deeply, and every sound in the dark feels like a threat. They eat raw meat from a scavenged carcass, torn with stone tools and fingers, chewing endlessly to extract every calorie. Their bodies are lean, tough, but constantly on the edge of energy depletion. And yet, this moment, this fragile, cold, tense moment, is the reality for thousands of generations. It's also the context in which the eventual discovery of fire would become not just revolutionary, but life-changing. Now, here's a question. If you had never seen fire before, never even imagined it, how would you react the first time? Would you fear it? Worship it? Try to touch it? And would you even recognize its potential? The story of fire begins here, in this raw, unforgiving world, where the simple act of surviving from one day to the next took every ounce of wit, instinct, and endurance. But that's only the beginning, because the moment fire entered the scene, nothing would ever be the same. So how does something as elusive and destructive as fire become something a human could use? The answer starts with accidents, not invention. Nature had already been playing with fire long before humans arrived. Lightning strikes set forests ablaze. Lava from volcanoes scorched the land. Even intense friction from rocks tumbling in landslides could ignite dry brush. Early humans would have seen these fires from a distance. Some fled in terror, but others paused. Why? Because fire wasn't just frightening, it was mesmerizing. It gave off light, warmth, and kept predators at bay. Scavengers could return to burned-out areas and find roasted animals easier to chew and digest. This was likely the first time a human tasted cooked meat. And it may have sparked a question. What if we could keep this? That idea, containment, came long before creation. Early humans didn't yet know how to make fire, but they could carry smoldering embers in bark, or maintain flames using dry grass and windshields. It wasn't easy. Rain could extinguish everything. A dropped ember might mean days of travel to find another natural fire source. That's why some anthropologists believe early humans became semi-nomadic, just to follow fire, or settle near naturally burning areas. Was precious, carried like treasure, guarded like a secret, passed from generation to generation, not just through genes, but through glowing coals carefully tended in the dark. This stage of the story is one of wonder and fear. The what-if era of fire. What if we could hold it, tame it, make it our own? And this quiet curiosity was about to lead to one of the most significant leaps in human evolution. Long before we struck the first spark, we were its keepers, guardians of flame. This chapter of history is often overlooked. We focus so much on who created fire that we forget how monumental it was simply to preserve it. Let's step into a Paleolithic scene again. A cave, deep and protected. A small flame flickers inside a ring of stones. A woman kneels beside it, feeding it dried grass and twigs. She guards it with her body against the wind. If the flame dies, the entire group may have to wait weeks or months before another wildfire appears. This was a full-time job. Archaeological evidence from places like the Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating back nearly 1 million years, shows layers of ash and charred bones deep inside, far from any entrance. That means the fire was controlled, maintained, and protected. It wasn't a fluke, it was intentional, and it shaped social behavior. People gathered around it for warmth and safety. The fire became the center of camp life, the first hearth. Over time, tasks formed around it, feeding it, cooking by it, guarding it. Through the night, children learned not to fear it, but to respect it. And elders likely passed down stories and knowledge as flames danced on the cave walls. In a sense, Fire was our first technology, but also our first teacher. It taught patience, discipline, responsibility, without knowing how to create it. Our ancestors still knew fire was the key to a different kind of life, and slowly, over generations, they would begin to understand not just how to use it, but how to summon it. Now we reach the pivotal moment. Who was the first person to make fire from scratch? We'll never know their name, but we can imagine the scene. Perhaps it was trial and error, someone banging rocks together for toolmaking, only to see a spark land on dry grass. Or maybe it was the slow realization that rubbing certain woods together produced heat. And with patience or coal, there are two main techniques believed to be used by early humans: percussion, flint, and pyrite. Striking flint against iron-rich rocks creates sparks. It's quick, but you need the right materials, and dry tinder ready to catch. Friction bow drill or hand drill. Rotating a wooden stick against a baseboard generates heat. It's slower, but requires fewer special materials. By around 400,000 years ago, there's solid archaeological evidence of firemaking in places like Israel, France, and China. Burnt hearths, tools blackened by flame. And the arrangement of fire pits suggest not just usage, but mastery. The leap from firekeeper to firemaker was more than technological. It was psychological. To create fire is to control a force of nature, no longer dependent on chance. Humans now had the power to push back the dark, to cook when they pleased, to settle in colder climates. It was nothing short of liberation. And once that power existed, it spread like wildfire. Let's talk about food, because fire didn't just make things warmer, it made them tastier, safer, and smarter. Yes, smarter. Cooking food breaks down fibers, softens tough meat, and kills bacteria. This made nutrients more accessible, reduced the energy needed to digest raw materials, and drastically cut the risk of foodborne illness. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that cooking played a direct role in human brain development. When we cooked, our bodies used less energy on digestion and could allocate more to brain growth. That shift, over thousands of years, may have helped us evolve into the cognitively complex species we are today. But beyond biology, fire changed the social nature of eating. Instead of scavenging and retreating to eat alone, as many primates do, humans began gathering around the fire to share meals. This likely reinforced cooperation, storytelling, and bonding. Picture this. A small group sits around a glowing hearth. A hunted animal is roasted and distributed. Faces flicker in the firelight. Someone mimics the hunt, arms flailing, the group laughing. Another retells a near-death escape from a lion. A child asks a question. An elder answers with a story. This wasn't just dinner. This was the beginning of culture, and at the center of it all was fire. Let's talk about food, because fire didn't just make things warmer, it made them tastier, safer, and smarter. Yes, smarter. Cooking food breaks down fibers, softens tough meat, and kills bacteria. This made nutrients more accessible, reduced the energy needed to digest raw materials, and drastically cut the risk of foodborne illness. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has argued that cooking played a direct role in human brain development. When we cooked, our bodies used less energy on digestion and could allocate more to brain growth. That shift, over thousands of years, may have helped us evolve into the cognitively complex species we are today. But beyond biology, fire changed the social nature of eating. Instead of scavenging and retreating to eat alone, as many primates do, humans began gathering around the fire to share meals. This likely reinforced cooperation, storytelling, and bonding. Picture this. A small group sits around a glowing hearth. A hunted animal is roasted and distributed. Faces flicker in the firelight. Someone mimics the hunt, arms flailing, the group laughing. Another retells a near-death escape from a lion. A child asks a question. An elder answers with a story. This wasn't just dinner. This was the beginning of culture, and at the center of it all was fire. For all its warmth, fire has always had a temper. It's easy to romanticize fire today. The campfire memories, the candles at dinner, the flickering hearth on a winter's night. But for early humans, fire was also unforgiving. It destroyed as easily as it nurtured. It's likely that one of the first human-made disasters was fire-related. A dropped ember, a strong wind, dry grass. And suddenly, what was once a controlled hearth became a wildfire, an unstoppable force consuming trees, animals, shelters, and even people. Imagine the panic. No modern firefighting tools, no water buckets, no escape. If the blaze surrounded your camp, entire bands of early humans may have perished in the very thing they once relied on. That's why fire was never simply seen as a tool. It was a being, a living, breathing entity that had to be respected, feared, maybe even worshipped. And yet, as they always did, humans adapted. They learned to create fire breaks by clearing vegetation. They began choosing strategic camp locations, near water or in rocky areas. Over time, they even learned to use fire's destructive power to their advantage. They burned grasslands to drive out game. They torched underbrush to make hunting easier. This was early ecosystem engineering, a subtle, long-forgotten form of land management. Fire became a weapon. 2. There are stories, unconfirmed but plausible, of prehistoric humans using burning branches to scare off predators or invading groups. Some evidence even suggests early humans burned the entrances to caves to trap animals inside or smoke out enemies. Fire was no longer just about survival. It was about control. And as our ancestors learned to dominate fire, they began to dominate their environment, their food sources, even each other. In this chapter of history, fire became something more than a tool. It became a power, and power always has consequences as humans began to migrate out of Africa and into the broader world. Europe, Asia, and eventually Australia. They didn't just bring stone tools, language, and group cooperation. They brought fire. And in many ways, it was fire that allowed these migrations to happen at all. Colder climates, previously uninhabitable, suddenly became survivable with controlled hearths. Animals that once could only be hunted in warmer regions were now pursued across snowy tundras. Fire let us cook roots, soften grains, boil water, and fend off predators in alien landscapes. But more than its physical uses, fire carried something deeper: cultural continuity. Think of it this way: wherever humans went, the fire came to every night. No matter the continent, tribes sat around its glow. They cooked, laughed, warned, planned. Fire became the universal thread, stitching together early human societies across continents. And yet, different groups began using fire in different ways. In what is now Australia, Aboriginal peoples used firestick farming, deliberately burning patches of land to encourage new growth and attract game. This practice, which still exists in some communities, managed entire ecosystems long before modern agriculture. In Europe, hearths were central to cave life, often found with burned bones, pigments, and flint tools nearby. Some cultures even used fire in burial rituals, marking a transition between life and death. In Asia, the use of fire evolved with the development of pottery, allowing communities to cook stews, ferment grains, and store food longer. A crucial step towards settled life. And the knowledge of fire spread with astonishing speed, not because of books, but because of stories. A child watched their parent rub sticks together. A traveler passed through a village and showed how to spark flint. One generation passed the knowledge to the next, until firemaking became instinct. It wasn't magic anymore. It was just something humans did. The world was getting smaller. The flame was growing larger, and civilization was just beginning to flicker into view. Now the story leaps forward from firelit caves to bronze melting furnaces. This is where fire becomes the foundation of technology. Think about what fire enabled once we mastered it: pottery, fire-hardened clay, making vessels for storing water, grain, or oil, critical for farming societies. Metalwork. Fire allowed us to melt copper, tin, and eventually iron, transforming everything from tools to weapons to trade. Brick-making. Fire turned mud into durable housing material, allowing permanent settlements to rise. Without fire, there's no Bronze Age, no Iron Age, no cities, no written language on clay tablets. But beyond its industrial uses, fire shaped how humans lived together. The hearth, once a tool for cooking, became the center of the home. From small huts to grand villas, every structure revolved around it. Was where families gathered, where news was shared, where food and warmth were offered to guests. In ancient Greece, the hearth of a city, the Prytaneum, was kept burning constantly, as a symbol of unity and divine favor. In Rome, the Vestal Virgins guarded the sacred fire of Vesta, believed to protect the empire itself. Fire had become not just a technology or a symbol, but an institution. We even used it to judge truth. Trial by fire. Anyone touch a hot iron. If you're innocent, you'll be unharmed. Mad. Yes, but it shows just how deeply fire had woven itself into our psyches. Not just as heat and light, but as judgment, purity, and power. And as cities rose and empires expanded, fire was always at the center, in blacksmiths' forges, temple candles, palace torches, from the smallest hut to the grandest capital. Fire was the heartbeat. And it all started with one frightened human, leaning over a wild spark in the dark. Even now, in a world of electric grids, glowing screens, and nuclear fusion, fire still burns in our symbols. The Olympic torch travels across continents before the games begin. Eternal flames burn at the graves of fallen soldiers. Candles flicker in churches, mosques, temples, representing prayers, souls, spirits, memory. Why? Because fire is more than an element. It's a metaphor. It represents something within us, our drive, our imagination, our restlessness. We still say we're fired up when excited. We still talk about burning with passion. We call revolutionaries sparks of change. And in every case, we're reaching back, without even knowing it, to that ancient moment when we first took control of flame. We're remembering the fear, the wonder, the danger, and the hope. Even today, if the power goes out, what's the first thing we do? We light a fire, a candle, a match, a stove burner, because somewhere deep in our DNA, we remember what it meant to huddle in the dark and see that first flicker of light. It's humbling, isn't it? We built empires, invented machines, touched the stars, but none of it would have happened without that first flame. That untold story, hidden in the ashes of forgotten caves and the sparks of ancient stone tools, is the true beginning of everything. And it still burns within us. Always has, always will.